Hello everyone, welcome back to the bite-sized Elden Ring 100% walkthrough. We are now in the tutorial cave, the Cave of Knowledge, and I'm going to cover all of the basic controls of the game for you. So, the very first thing to learn, and I think probably the single most important button for beginners to understand, is the concept of locking on. So, without locking on, you just swing by hitting R1, for example. It can be very hard to aim. You know, you're playing a controller game, you might be pointed the wrong way. You might try to hit this guy and just, this is what I see beginners do this, right? They swing wildly, they don't lock on, and they miss a bunch and don't quite understand what's going on. Or they're trying to hold up their shield with L1, and because they're not locked on, they're not pointed the right way, and they're like this, and they're being hit in the back. So hit R3, and you'll see that white circle appear on the enemy. You're now locked onto it. If I move right, if I move left, I stay facing it. This means I don't have to aim. It's the single most important concept to get used to in Souls games, is this concept of lock on, because it makes the game a lot easier in most cases to be locked on. So this way I can guarantee that I'm facing him. You can roll to avoid attacks. This game has a concept of being invulnerable while rolling. So if an attack is going out, like an enemy's sword is swinging through you, and you roll, and you're in the middle of the roll, you have something called invulnerability frames, which you can just call iframes for short. And those iframes mean you will take no damage. So it's a very strange concept to get used to from other games. You're like, oh hey, the sword physically went through me, so I would think that I'm supposed to get hit. But no, you're actually invulnerable for a certain period while you're rolling. So this game is about rolling at the right time or blocking. So blocking consumes stamina and will mitigate a percentage of damage based off of the shield that you have. In our particular case, if you look over at the right guarded damage negation, it says physical 100. That means this shield for Vagabond starting class mitigates all physical damage. So as long as I have the shield up with L1, it drains stamina, but see, I'm not taking any damage at all. Now what I just did there is called a guard counter. Right after you block, you can actually hit, and their weapon bounces off your shield, you can actually hit R2. Now R2 normally does a heavy attack, but if you do it right after blocking and then bouncing off your shield, it does something called a guard counter, which does some damage kind of like a critical hit. If you hold down R2, you'll do a charged heavy, which does even more damage. So it's light attack R1, heavy attack R2, charged heavy, hold R2. In addition, you can do all sorts of things like roll into an attack. Like that made me do a backstep into a swing, so that was circle R1. You can do running attacks, so I can be sprinting and hit R1. You can jump with X, so you can do jumping attacks, jump R1. So for example, see how my R2 does a thrust? If I do a jump R2, it was different, right? I do like a slam down with my sword. So all of these things are tools you can use, for different, if you want to hit the enemy in different ways. So like I can run up, do a jumping R2. For spellcasters, if you're a mage or a priest and you're wanting to do your spells, you'll start off with a staff in your right hand or a seal in your right hand for sorcerer and priest respectively. You can cast your spell by hitting R1, your selected spell. You can change what spell you have equipped by hitting the up arrow. You can see that for this particular starting class I have no spell. That slot is empty if you look above my flasks in the bottom left. So if I hit up arrow, you see how it's flashing, but nothing's happening. You would actually be able to take out that guy that's up top there if you have a spell. So you can switch weapons. Look at this, I start with this you can see I did the guard counter, but it missed. Now I go back to sword. I'm doing this by hitting the right arrow. When you hear that sort of low thud, that means that you actually stunned the enemy and you can now hit R1 to do a critical strike on them. So guard counters will often result in that. So you hit L1, R2 after they bounce off your shield, then they'll be stunned, then you hit R1 and do a critical strike on them. You can see I'm a little injured, so I could heal if I wanted. So yeah, to cover that, right arrow switches weapons in your right hand, left arrow switches weapons in your left hand. And in the left hand specifically, you can go to no weapon. The right hand doesn't do that. If you want to wield the weapon with both hands, you hit triangle and the hand you want. So triangle and R1. So now I'm wielding this with both hands. This lowers the strength. If a weapon requires a certain strength stat to use, this actually lowers that requirement. So you can actually two-hand a weapon even if your strength isn't high enough to wield it one-handed. If you two-hand it. And then hitting triangle or R1 again will go back to two-handed. And you can do the same thing, triangle L1. Now I have a shield. Not the best weapon of choice, but... So that's switching weapons. You can change target by hitting your right stick. So see how I'm moving the right stick left and right to switch between targets. See, I did a jumping or two there. When you do a roll, if you roll through destructible objects, it will destroy them. You can also swing your weapon to destroy destructible objects, but rolling is often a really safe, easy way to destroy things. So here's the guy that was shooting at us before. You can see how I took my shield off. Now I have it back on. So you can see you can actually block. You can even guard counter. So I actually guard countered a crossbow bolt shot. So it's not just about melee weapons bouncing off the shield. Ranged weapons, you also can open them up to be guard countered. Guard countering is a really good, safe way to play the game early on if you're new, because it just kind of takes the burden of rolling and timing and all of that out of the equation. So you crouch by pressing L3, and you make less noise, and an enemy might be less likely to notice you. If you can get behind an enemy, you can backstab them. So that's what I did, and that was just with R1. Why is it always stealth? You can also crouch and get into grass and be harder to see. So this is talking about doing the critical hit that I just did on that other enemy. You have to be, it can be finicky, like you have to be perfectly at their back. So you can see I was kind of off to the side a little bit, so it didn't actually do a critical hit. Try jump attack. So this is talking about breaking stance. If I jump like this, that's a good stance breaker. So enemies have something called poise, and the higher their poise, the harder it is to break their stance like that and put them into the vulnerable state where they can be critical hit. So these enemies are super weak, so they were very, very easy to do this to. Up here is a Stake of Marika. Now normally when you die, you respawn at the last site of grace that you touched or rested at. But with a Stake of Marika, if you die and you die near enough to a stake, you'll have the option to respawn at the stake instead. So for example, you can see this yellow wall. This indicates that the next room contains a boss, and we have to go through the mist, fight the boss in the room, and while we're in the room we won't be able to come back out here. This fog wall stays in place. So in order to get that fog wall to go away, we have to beat the boss. So if we go in there and the boss were to kill us and we were to die, then we could have the option to respawn here which would make this easy. Now this boss that is coming up, our first real boss, if you're a class with a shield, you just want a guard counter. He's basically super vulnerable to guard counters, so just walk up, hold your shield like this, and hit R2 after he bounces off. If you're a mage, literally just spam your glintstone pebble at him. He'll just he'll die before he even reaches you. He dies to like 4 glintstone pebbles, so just hit R1 4 times and he'll die. It is kind of hilarious. You can see that there are a lot of people that are super new to this kind of game because you go in here and there are bloodstains everywhere. So we'll just show that when we come in. There's usually bloodstains just all over the floor here. So again, lock on, hold L1, and then just guard counter him. You can see, 1 critical hit, took him out. Hey, people have been doing well. There's fewer bloodstains. Often I come into this room, and it's just covered in blood from all of the presumably 5-year-olds who are dying to Godrick, Soldier of Godrick. And that's the tutorial cave. If you come up here, you'll get the strength gesture. So if you bring this menu up to get to your inventory, let's talk about inventory for a second. I highly recommend turning on this inventory feature from settings that lets you see what new things you have. That yellow exclamation point means you have never looked at that item before since you got it. So now that I've looked at it, that it'll be gone. But this is a great way of just like, oh, I want to immediately look at some new thing I got. I'm not sure if I mentioned what this was, the Tarnished Wizened Finger that we picked up in the chapel. If you hit square, you can read details about an item. So this is how we write messages. So if we wanted to leave messages on the ground for another player, this is what we would use, this finger. So the way that works is I would say use. And then you can go with templates. So I could say try an action. Try gesturing, because I'm putting it down right where you got the strength gesture. So now when someone picks up strength, I've made a nice suggestion that says try gesture. If you go over here, you can have up to 6 gestures kind of equipped as a shortcut. So for example, if I want to bow, you hit X to execute it. So that's how gestures work. I could hit X and point forward. Alright. So now you can see we're back at the start where this is where we jumped down. There's the ghost that we talked to. You hit triangle to open doors and interact with things and pick up loot. In a lot of other games, the X is used to both jump and loot, and I'm very used to that, so sometimes you'll see me like I did there, I'll walk up and jump because I hit X instead of triangle. This white mist, this is an example of an area blocked off by a lock that needs a stone sword key. So all stone sword keys go into these imp statues here. So you examine them and they'll say use stone sword key. Now we don't have one. So hilariously your character kind of checks their, like, hey, I don't have one. But if you did have one, you could unlock this and then you could go in and proceed to do this area. This is a higher level area. It's one of the hardest areas in the starting zone. So we'll come back to this at the end. So that's why not having a stone sword key really doesn't matter. So we got another grace. We can rest, get back our health, get back our flasks. If we come over here, we picked up the Tarnished Furled Finger, which lets us put a gold summon sign down on the ground, and someone else can see our summon sign, and you can then join them for some cooperative play if you want to do things together. You will be brought into their world when that happens. If you don't like being in their world, like sometimes you'll like join someone in their world and they'll just be AFK or screwing around or doing things too slowly or whatever. You decide you don't want to be there anymore. That's what the finger severer is for. So the furled finger is how you put a summon sign down, and the finger severer is how you get back to your home world. It just lets you bail if you decide I don't like this, I'm not interested in what's happening. Almost all elevators in this game work the same way. Regardless of what they're shaped like, they have a button in the middle, and running over that button will trigger the elevator. You can then run off if you don't want to go up the elevator, so you could trigger it and leave, or you could stay. But that's how you make an elevator go up or down. If the elevator ever isn't around, there's always a lever like this to bring it back to you. So like if I did send this elevator up and it wasn't here, everywhere there's an elevator in this game, there's a corresponding lever in both floors to like make sure you have a way of getting it back. That message is lying. So now we get our first view of the starting zone, Limgrave. I'm going to walk out nice and slow. Very cinematic. You can see the huge castle. There's a church. You can see there's like a ruined bridge and some tower. There's another tower. And then we can go over here. You could put your summon sign down anywhere, but there's also a concept in this game called summoning pools. So when you examine one of these statues, you'll activate a summoning pool, and you can actually make it so that you spawn in at the summoning pool to do cooperative, and that's a way of kind of like, if you're near a summoning pool, it's like indicating, hey, I want to do this area now. That means they don't have to hunt for your specific sign. So that's it. We've done the tutorial cave, and we've now taken our first step into the zone known as Limgrave. So sticking with our bite-sized format, this is where we're going to stop. And when we come back, we will begin exploring Limgrave itself. So until next time.